股指再次退守3200点。
On October 17th, China's A-shares market experienced a shocking event that stunned everyone. The SSC Composite Index fell below 3,200 points, causing widespread panic. Yet, against this downturn, stocks related to the quote, Chuanyu concept, unquote, representing Sichuan and Chongqing surged unexpectedly. What led to this sudden rise? The answer lies in two major developments that shook the market. The quote, massive relocation in Sichuan and the migration of thousands of factories from Guangdong to the west. Online discussions quickly speculated that there was a hidden agenda behind this surge, referred to as wartime relocation. The most unsettling aspect was the official silence regarding these rumors. This unusual reticence only fueled wild speculation, with some even suggesting that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, might be planning to move the capital to Sichuan. On October 21st, the Hong Kong Economic Journal published a commentary confirming these concerns. The article stated that while the surge in Sichuan stocks could be attributed to the relocation efforts, the real issue lies in a hidden strategic shift to the west. Why make such a major move? The rationale is that if a conflict breaks out, the southeastern coast would become an easy target for enemy missiles, making it necessary to shift China's economic, cultural, and political focus to the southwestern inland. Sichuan, known as the Land of Abundance, is strategically surrounded by mountains, making it easier to defend and harder to attack. Its proximity to the Belt and Road Initiative network also makes it a key location. Clearing large swaths of urban land in Sichuan is seen as a move to accommodate important institutions, enterprises, and industries. Looking at it from this perspective, the relocations in Sichuan are likely just the beginning. More supportive policies and incentives are expected to follow, explaining why related stocks have been skyrocketing. On October 15th, a viral map of demolition sites in Chengdu provided further evidence. The map revealed that the relocation was not just minor adjustments but a massive restructuring of the city. Many online users shared stories of receiving multi-million-dollar compensation due to the relocations, becoming what they call the quote, second-generation demolition millionaires, unquote, overnight.
What?
The authorities' reaction to these rumors has been subtle. While they quickly dismissed the notion of getting rich through demolition, they remained curiously silent about the more alarming rumor of relocating economic, cultural, and political centers to the southwestern inland due to potential war. As people were still processing this shocking information, even more startling news broke. On October 15th, reports surfaced across social media platforms that major companies such as Huawei, Gree and TCL, all based in Guangdong, were planning mass relocations. The scale was staggering. TCL alone was said to be relocating 68,000 employees, while Hot Tech was moving 35,000. Amer International Group 20,000, Gree 7,000, and Weihua Group 6,500. In response to this uproar, the Guangzhou Daily only issued a denial on October 19th. However, their attempt to dispel the rumors raised more questions. While they categorically denied the relocations, their vague response to the corporate migration reports and complete omission of the term wartime relocation seemed odd. Political commentator Li Linyi, speaking to the Epoch Times, voiced what many were thinking. Whether it's the large-scale demolitions in Chengdu or the massive relocations of Guangdong enterprises, they all hint at a disturbing possibility. If President Xi Jinping decides to launch a conflict with Taiwan, coastal cities would bear the brunt of the damage, and even the capital might be relocated to inland areas like Sichuan. This issue is too sensitive, Li said. Local officials wouldn't dare openly deny it, and companies wouldn't risk making statements either. A report from Radio Free Asia added fuel to the fire. Tian Qiguang, a scholar specializing in China's third front construction, admitted in an interview that he initially thought the migration of Guangdong enterprises was a rumor. However, he later discovered that the Chinese State Council was seriously considering it. Reviewing the CCP's recent actions, certain clues have become apparent. On October 12th, the CCP released a video across platforms like Douyin, Weibo, and WeChat with a chilling title. Quote, why do we need to move industries to the inland after launching intercontinental missiles? The video starts with a shocking admission. The large-scale migration of enterprises from Guangdong is not a rumor but a government strategy. It even linked this to the deployment of intercontinental missiles. Last month, on the 25th, the same day China launched an intercontinental ballistic missile, the government announced a critical strategy. Encourage the migration of capital, technology, and labor-intensive industries from the east to the central and western regions, and from central cities to the hinterland. Given the eastern coastal region's superior infrastructure, funding, and talent, relocating industries inland seems counterintuitive. However, the video made it clear. Some interpret this as developing the West, but the real reason behind moving industries inland is wartime planning. Even more alarmingly, the video stated, while past industrial clusters have cut costs, the current volatile situation means concentrated setups have become a liability, especially under the threat of war, making them susceptible to devastating attacks. This stormy and turbulent situation could emerge at any moment. As people were still grappling with this bombshell, screenshots of a WeChat conversation that took place on July 16 surfaced, triggering further online uproar. The screenshots showed an exchange where a man revealed he had just spent 53 minutes on the phone with someone from the National Development and Reform Commission, NDRC, who warned him war is coming and advised him to head to Chongqing for safety. Why Chongqing? Its mountainous terrain and numerous air raid shelters make it ideal for avoiding bombings, outmatching even the northeastern regions like Paektu Mountain in Dahinganling Prefecture. A netizen summed it up well, quote, "The NDRC oversees production coordination, so being one of the first departments to relay such warnings makes perfect sense. If this is true, once preparations for war begin, resources like coal and steel will see a significant surge." From this WeChat leak, the CCP has secretly issued directives across its ministries, preparing them for the possibility of conflict in the Taiwan Strait. The NDRC's internal notification to brace for war is no joke. The scariest part, even the CCP is unsure about this conflict's outcome. Insiders believe that losing is inevitable. Even before the first shot is fired, government officials are already planning their escape routes. Chongqing's sudden rise in popularity can be attributed to three key factors: its abundance of air raid shelters, a complex terrain that makes it ideal for evading bombings, and its relative safety compared to the more vulnerable northeastern border regions. You might be wondering, why not escape to the northeast? The reason is simple, because even the authorities no longer trust North Korea. One online comment stood out. The NDRC's overseas production adjustments, so logically they would be the first to issue wartime notices. If the rumors are true, a shift in production capacity would be the clearest sign once wartime preparations begin. Resources like coal and steel essential for war would surely see a surge. So the peaceful images on TV right now are just a facade. Those who truly understand are already making plans to evacuate. This is not a joke. Everyone should take it seriously. In recent years, the CCP has had to consider the option of waging war. Western countries have seen through the true nature of the CCP and have imposed stricter economic and political sanctions. Financial institutions under the CCP, such as the People's Bank of China, the China Securities Regulatory Commission, and the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, have exhausted all available measures to stimulate the economy. Now, only the Ministry of Finance remains, but it has also run out of effective fiscal stimulus policies. No matter what strategies are employed, foreign investment is not coming back. Government bonds, nobody is buying them. The wealthy have moved their money overseas. Economic growth has slowed, tax revenues have dropped, and they still need to support Russia and fund military spending. There simply isn't enough money. The CCP has truly hit a financial dead end. Both the Ministry of Finance and the central bank have used every trick in their book. On the other hand, ordinary people are struggling too. Waves of business closures have led to rising unemployment, while prices keep soaring and housing remains prohibitively expensive. People's wallets are just not filling up. In such a scenario, social tensions are bound to grow. President Xi Jinping is backed into a corner. Waging war might be his last card to play. Why? Think about it. A conflict would immediately divert attention from domestic issues. Once nationalist sentiment is stirred, who cares about the economy? Wartime controls would allow the government to enforce strict regulations, and public would have no choice but to obey. Revving up the military factories could also address unemployment. By mobilizing society, the CCP can stabilize its grip on power. The scariest part is they're already preparing for this day. On June 19th, Xi Jinping suddenly held a political work conference in Yanan with top military officials. The location was no coincidence. Yanan was where the CCP grew strong during the revolutionary era. Holding a meeting there is a clear signal. If they can't win the war, they'll retreat into the mountains. The conference officially aimed to discuss forging loyalty and courage, but upon closer examination, it was essentially a war mobilization. What is the CCP most afraid of? High casualties that could scare the troops, losing a war that would crush morale, and most of all, people not following orders when it matters most. The true message of this meeting: war is imminent and it might be a tough fight. We might even have to revert to guerrilla tactics like the old days. But no matter how hard it gets, everyone must obey the party. If you hesitate, you're a traitor. This wasn't just a political meeting, it was a final ultimatum to the military. If the party orders you to fight, you will fight without question. Seeing this level of preparation, it seems conflict might indeed be on the horizon. In July, another major event occurred. Suzhou issued 10 measures to deepen the implementation of the tight days policies for government agencies, a policy ostensibly about cutting government spending. But in reality, it was a warning to the public. The underlying message: the current hardships are just the beginning. Wait until Western sanctions escalate, or worse, when war breaks out. That's when things will get truly difficult. Stock up on food, save your money. This isn't just about saving money, it's a sign of wartime control measures. They plan to tightly regulate resources, strictly censor information, and restrict people's movement. When conflicts begin, the authorities will lock down society similar to the pandemic lockdowns to suppress any unrest. Meanwhile, the war would channel the unemployment into military production lines. Building tanks and missiles could solve the unemployment problem, making society even more stable. For the CCP, this is a more reliable way to maintain power than economic growth. Where did the CCP learn these tactics? Look no further than Putin. Remember what Russia looked like before the war in Ukraine? Let's look at the data. In 2021, Russia's economy was heavily dependent on oil and gas sales, which accounted for 40% of its GDP. Inflation had risen to 6.5% and unemployment rates had surged to 5.8%. Meanwhile, foreign investors were withdrawing their capital and the elite were moving their wealth abroad, creating a significant threat to the stability of Putin's regime. However, the outbreak of a single war dramatically changed the situation for Putin. Nationalist fervor surged across the country, the defense industry experienced a significant boom, and as a result, his regime became even more secure. It appears the CCP might be following a similar playbook. Currently, China is facing widespread economic challenges, with local government bonds defaulting and overall economic stagnation. Concerns about economic survival increasingly dominate private gatherings, and protests are breaking out across the country, reflecting growing public discontent. Even more alarming, reports suggest that Xi Jinping is considering abandoning hundreds of coastal cities. The reasoning behind this strategy is that in the event of a conflict, the US military would likely begin by weakening China's forces at sea, followed by a land invasion. In such a scenario, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, would retreat to the western regions, including Sichuan, Yanan, Hunan, and Shaanxi, effectively conceding control over much of the nation. In response, the CCP is taking strategic measures by relocating companies to the western regions, concealing key wartime industries there, and preparing to rely on nuclear deterrence as a means of survival in the event of a conflict. This is why stocks for companies in the western provinces have been skyrocketing. A recent report by the Wall Street Journal highlighted China's preparations for potential conflict, including a map showing the distribution of missile launch bases across the country. Experts suggest the real number of these bases could be far greater, possibly over 100,000. With China spanning 9.6 million square kilometers, President Xi Jinping seems to have deployed missile bases throughout the nation, following a strategy similar to that of Hamas or Hezbollah. Funds from Chinese citizens have been funneled into these preparations. The United States has already seen through these motives. On June 13th, the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission, USCC, held a hearing where experts made a bold claim. China isn't just preparing for a potential invasion of Taiwan, but is also gearing up for a confrontation with the US. According to these experts, Chinese leaders are willing to risk everything to maintain their grip on power, regardless of the consequences. Intelligence reports have indicated that the PLA could be prepared to launch an invasion of Taiwan as early as next year. China's military capabilities are expanding rapidly, making an escalation seem inevitable. This hearing was far from a formality. It underscored that the US is fully aware of the looming threat. Both intelligence and military agencies have been actively preparing, laying the groundwork for potential future military action. When the time comes, the US military is poised to respond decisively. The US is prepared to engage in a long-term war of attrition if it means dismantling the CCP, and to this end it has established a vast network across the Pacific. This network extends from south to north, leaving no gaps, with various missile systems deployed and expansions reaching beyond the second island chain to more distant islands. This is gearing up to be an epic war of attrition. Most importantly, the US military is committed to a sustained campaign to defeat the CCP. This is not a drill. One location that stands out is Tinian. Decades ago, US forces launched the atomic bomb mission from this very island. After years of neglect, it is now undergoing extensive renovations, with 4 new super runways being constructed. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The US is quietly enhancing its presence across the entire Pacific island chain. Philippines' Luzon Island, 6 to 7 airstrips are being upgraded simultaneously. Second island chain, from Palau, Yep, Guam, Tinian, Saipan, and all the way to Darwin and Tyndall in Australia. These islands are numerous like stars in the sky. Each is being equipped with underground facilities, air defense systems, repair depots, refueling stations, and ammunition bunkers. The scale of construction is staggering. During a recent site inspection, journalists noted that even clearing vegetation on Tinian Island was a colossal task. Why revive the second island chain? While the first island chain is closer to China, it is vulnerable to initial strikes. Furthermore, political shifts could render bases there useless if local governments change their stance. The CCP's attempts to influence politics in Japan are clear, but the US is well aware of these tactics. The US military strategy is also to prepare for sudden attacks, akin to Pearl Harbor or the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. Should the PLA dare to strike US allies, Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, or American bases, the US will retaliate immediately from the second island chain. The message is clear and it's serious. Meanwhile, the situation in the South China Sea is more volatile than ever. The PLA's Southern Theater Command is conducting frequent live-fire drills, testing America's limits. If the US remains passive, China will slowly advance, but if the US takes action, the CCP will immediately accuse it of provocation. Recent confrontations have shown the Philippines at a disadvantage, but Indonesia has started clashing with Chinese Coast Guard ships. Unlike the Philippines, Indonesia's naval strength is more robust and it could stand its ground. Germany recently placed an enormous 8.5 billion euro defense order with Rheinmetall, focusing on producing heavy artillery, especially the 155mm caliber. Why the urgency? Because Europe recognizes the potential severity of future conflicts, and Western allies need to wake up. This is the nuclear age. No one knows when an unforeseen crisis might escalate. Thinking the world will remain peaceful is a dangerous fantasy. Both sides have already begun mobilizing, and allies have made their final attempts at peace. Recently, the British Foreign Secretary visited China, and over the past 2 years, rounds of American officials have traveled to Beijing. These were all diplomatic efforts for peace, but China, Russia, and North Korea seem determined to act aggressively, dragging the world into chaos. This conflict is shaping up to be a zero-sum game. China's recent actions indicate heightened military activity, including another round of live-fire drills in the Taiwan Strait and the passage of the aircraft carrier Liaoning through the area. Meanwhile, with 2 weeks remaining until the US presidential election, China and Russia convened talks in Kazan, hinting at broader strategic plans. US intelligence agencies have expressed concerns that Russia, China, and Iran might seek to exploit the election to incite violence and provoke civil unrest within the United States. The escalation appears inevitable, as evidenced by the steady rise in gold prices and emerging domestic trends within China. Stocks linked to Sichuan and Chongqing are surging, companies are rapidly relocating to the western regions, and massive infrastructure projects are underway across the inland areas, signaling a strategic shift in preparation for potential conflict. In simple terms, the CCP is preparing for the worst-case scenario. Talks of relocating the capital have surfaced, with cities like Xi'an, Chengdu, and Chongqing frequently mentioned, but Chongqing remains the most likely candidate. During World War II, Chiang Kai-shek made Chongqing the wartime capital. Surrounded by mountains, filled with air raid shelters, and safeguarded by the Yangtze River, it's a city that's hard to bomb and even harder to invade. The recent surge in Sichuan-Chongqing-related stocks hints at the CCP's contingency planning. They're preparing to relocate the capital if the worst comes to pass. The shadow of war may be closer than we think.